What's up, guys? 1-1 in baseball last night. Obviously, not as great as I wanted it to be. The Red Sox came through. My Red Sox. That was pretty much no sweat, really, with the Orioles having clinched and just not really showing up for the next game. Giants, unfortunately, not good, not a winner. It was a slight win if you got them both at underdog prices like I did. So, very slight win in those two games yesterday for me. I'm going to talk about another baseball play today. Hopefully, we finish the year getting out of that bad streak that we've been in here. I got the college football plays up for today in my college football video. I haven't looked at what the numbers are now, but I still like all those plays, all those sides, unless the numbers have really changed. I'm going to talk about a couple other college football leans here. I leaned to Texas Tech. -8 or 8.5 or whatever it is. They're in an injured player theory situation because their quarterback got hurt last week against West Virginia, I believe. And I think that's what caused the line to drop from 10 to 8 or 8.5. So I think in a situation like that, you have your star player go down. Very next game, the team tends to pick it up and want to play well, compensate for that loss, and you get those extra points of value. I don't think their backup quarterback is that much worse than the guy who went down. So I think Texas Tech has a little bit of extra value there because of that, and I think because Houston is perceived to be better than they are because they're 2-2 and Texas Tech is 1-3, I believe. Houston, people know the name, know that they've been a pretty decent college football program recently. This year, I don't think that's the case. I talked about it in week 1 where they didn't return very many of their starters from last year, lost a lot of guys to the draft and stuff, and I don't think they've really come together. I think this is a down year for them. Even though they've won 2 games so far, I don't think they've done it against anybody good, really. Texas Tech is definitely the better team, and the line is telling you that. Although I do think this is Houston. This might be their first Big 12 game ever, so they might be motivated in that way. They might get up for it in that game, which would be the one thing that kind of would keep me off of it. But everything else is kind of a lean to Texas Tech. Makes me lean Texas Tech there. And then you got, I like Old Dominion plus 14.5 at Marshall. If you look at that situation, Marshall, they're kind of in a sandwich spot because they're coming off beating a bigger conference team, beating Virginia Tech, even though Virginia Tech is actually very down this year. But I think that kind of helps this play a little bit more, this lean at least a little bit more, because Virginia Tech is perceived to be probably better than they are, and people don't really realize that Marshall was actually a 5.5-point favorite in that game. So they were supposed to win. But I think it's still a big win for Marshall, in their minds, too. We beat a big conference team. And Marshall has NC State up next. So that's kind of big as well. Big conference team there. This game is sandwiched in between the two. And it's Old Dominion, who hasn't really done well, hasn't really looked good, hasn't done much. And last week, Old Dominion, in a game that I think they were big enough favorite or would have been that the line... There wasn't even a line. The game wasn't lined. They played Texas A&M Commerce, and they almost lost the game. Texas A&M Commerce scored a touchdown right at the end and went for 2 points, went for a 2-point conversion. And if they got it, they would have won the game or been ahead by 1 with 20 seconds left. And they failed to get the 2-point conversion, and Old Dominion won by 1. I think people are going to look at that and think Old Dominion sucks. They almost lost to a team that I think is in FCS, or maybe they're in FBS now. I don't even know. They lost in a game that wasn't even, or almost lost in a game that wasn't even lined. That's a bad showing for Old Dominion. So I think we get extra value for all those reasons here. I think this is the first conference game of the season for both of these teams, so that might motivate both sides a little bit. But you get Marshall kind of in that sandwichy looking spot there. Undefeated, looking a bit better than they probably are. Old Dominion looking a little bit worse than they probably are. And Old Dominion's getting 14.5 points. I like Old Dominion in that one. And those are just leans. So leans to Texas Tech -8, 8.5, whatever. Old Dominion plus 14.5. The actual play that I'm going to talk about in baseball here is a motivational angle. You get to the end of the season, find a spot where you have the better pitching matchup and the team is motivated versus a team that is not motivated. And that's what you have here with the Chicago Cubs and the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers, I believe, are locked into the 3 seed in the NL or whatever it is. They've locked up the NL Central, and I don't think they can move up or down, so I think that's it. They don't have anything to play for. Chicago has everything to play for as they're battling for one of those final wild card spots. I think they're in one. They're either in one right now or they're out by like 1 or 1.5 games, so they're really trying to win. Normally, if it's a must-win like that, like I said, the team tends to be a little bit overvalued, but I think in this case, even though the Cubs are a very small road favorite, and it's kind of moved to that, I wish I got them at an underdog price because I think they were an underdog for a brief period of time. I still think that the value is there. There's a reason why they are favored. I'm taking the Cubs minus 108. I probably wouldn't want to lay more than like minus 120 or something on them because there is that pressure, but they are the only motivated team in this matchup, and they have Jordan Wicks pitching. He's a guy who I've talked about multiple times. I've bet him multiple times. He's a rookie, and in this case, the Brewers have never seen him before, so I think that kid gives him an advantage early on. He hasn't been posting like really good strikeout numbers so far, but he's been effective, and he's been limiting basically all of his opponents have scored like 3 or fewer earned runs against him, I think. I would have to double check that, but he's held all the opponents' run totals down, even though he's not striking out as many guys. Wicks, I think, is good, and he's going to have that early advantage because the Brewers haven't seen him before. All the motivation is on that side, and the Brewers have, I believe, Eric Lauer pitching, and I think he hasn't pitched since maybe May or June. He's been injured, so normally I kind of actually like the angle where an injured pitcher comes back, but in this case, I don't think that it throws off like all these other angles here. Lauer is not a good pitcher. His stats before he went down this year were awful. He was putting way too many guys on base, like 1.5 whip or something, and an ERA like north of 5 or maybe even 6. Just not good numbers at all. Walking way too many guys. I don't think he's very good. And the Cubs, of course, have seen him before, even though they only have like a 218, 219 lifetime batting average off him. They've seen him before. He's the worst pitcher here. The Cubs have the motivation. Chicago Cubs minus 108. Let's go.